Hello, Steve White, Trek Boy 89 for Steve Arts 89. Well, I've been doing a Star Trek marathon, chronological. I did Enterprise and now I'm doing Discovery. I did a short sort of overview of the series, but now I sort of want to do a bit of an episode by episode, which should go quicker than the Enterprise ones because there's only 15 episodes for this season. They go down from 15 to 14 to 13 to 10, I think, with Discovery. And I must admit, I must confess, over the years, I ultimately boycotted Star Trek and wasn't spending money on Star Trek in general because of how they were treating fans. But I had bought a few pieces of merchandising because I love the badges, the communicators, and the phasers. And had they produced communicators and phasers, I would have bought them too. And I did buy a couple of comics. This was one on Stamets because he's a gay character, so I wanted to pay attention to how they were treating the gay characters on the show because I'm gay and I'm biased. So, and also there was one on Saru because I like the Saru character because he actually feels like a Star Trek character, and I feel like the actor did a really good job of portraying him, and I actually like Saru outside of some of the other characters. And I did buy the official collector's edition exclusive photos and concept art, basically behind the scenes, because the production was beautiful. Even if some elements didn't fit Star Trek and were wrong, like the costumes, overall the production design was beautiful, and I wanted something on that. And later we did get the art of Star Trek Discovery. So that's my Star Trek Discovery modern New Trek collection, basically, because I've spent all my money on Transformers and Smurfs and superheroes and He-Man and all that over the last few years. So I just want to confess all that. I have bought a few pieces of merchandise, but that's it. Now, the actual episodes, now the series, like I said before, originally was supposed to be, the idea was an anthology show, and each year would be a different, like American Horror Story. So the first year probably would have been a general sort of Star Trek series, modern series with a female captain and more diversity in that. And that's what we sort of see in the opening scenes of the first episode before the Klingon War. The second season would have been a Klingon War, probably focusing more on the Klingon side of it and sort of delving into sort of seeing the alien, an alien race sort of being the centre of a series. I think that's where they would have gone with that. The third season would have been Mirror Universe, and I'm not sure what was after that. But what we got was all that crammed into 1 year, and some of it doesn't work. The Klingon War itself, I mean, Star Trek shouldn't be about war, so that was a misfire in the first place. And the way they did the war didn't really work either. And they kind of backed off on it and then wrapped it up pretty quick, and they seemed to be more interested in the 4 episodes they spent in the Mirror Universe than the Klingon War. So, just to go through the episode. The Vulcan Hello, of course, starts off good, goes bad. Now, we blame Berman for the war, but she didn't really cause it. Landing on the beacon, she had no idea what was happening. That wasn't her fault. She wanted a Vulcan Hello. She never really got it, and I don't know if setting the sort of targeting the weapons on the ship for a second caused anything, because the other ships had already been called in, because the Klingons wanted a war, and they were going to have it either way. So she didn't really cause the war. She got blamed for it. But she was tedious, her arrogance, but then again, she was also severely injured, and I think she was a bit out of her mind. I'm not sure if we didn't give her enough sort of understanding for that. Because that character, yeah, I was a bit more sympathetic to the character watching it again, but still, she's a damaged person, very arrogant, who thinks she's the best at everything when she really has a lot of issues coming from the trauma of her parents being killed, the trauma of being attacked by the Vulcan extremists when she was a child, the bad parenting by Sarek, just growing up as a human amongst Vulcans is just child abuse. A half Vulcan, half human, it's sort of different, like with Spock, but yeah, they so many issues there. Now, the second episode is just continuing on. We have the battle, and the thing that frustrates me the most with that is the idea that they had of capturing the lead Klingon guy, Tuma, I've forgotten his name now, so he wouldn't be a martyr, was a good idea, but then they killed him and made him a martyr anyway. And the idea that just the the captain and the first officer beam over alone with no security and no one to help them when they're trying to basically knock out a whole bridge of people and kidnap, like the king, was just ridiculously stupid. Now, why these characters would do something this stupid, I don't know, but obviously it didn't work, and I guess they just wanted to kill Georgiou so they could get to the next sort of phase, the next sort of section of the show before we got to the mirror version where she would come back. So the third episode, Context is for Kings. I'm sure they changed the name of that episode. When I originally was watching the series, it was called Context is King, but now it's for Kings. So, okay. And we basically introduced to Lorca. We know that he's running this ship like a Mirror Universe ship because he's using the war as an excuse for doing everything that he does, because that's what the Mirror Universe likes. They're all at war all the time. And that does make it make more sense. And I was more sympathetic to the other characters because you see them more as victims of this captain and this command and the situation. The Butcher's Knife cares not for the Lamb's Cry. They basically are sort of doing their first sort of, after the Battle of the Binary Stars, of course, because that's the main Klingon war is really the Battle of the Binary Stars. And it's very small. They just shoot each other up, destroy a fleet of ships, and then they just go off, and it's little like skirmishes for like 6 months while they try and sort themselves out. This one, they are using the spore drive to rescue a colony because they're one of the ones producing dilithium and that. Choose Your Pain, we have Lorca being tortured and being given basically the Klingon trader, who we all saw what he was well before it came out in the episode. We're all talking about before the big reveal. And the big issue with this episode is one of those production issues where we see what's said as a D7 in the script as a D7, but visually it's not a D7. And they could have just said Klingon ship or a D6 or a D8 or something. But to say, oh, this is a D7 and try and gaslight fans into saying that's a D7, even though we all know what a D7 looks like, we've all got the toys, it's part of popular culture. Moments like that made people hate this show because they could have just not done that. If they didn't like those ships, they could have just created a new ship and called it whatever. But they try and tell us, no, this is what a D7 looks like now. We've replaced your one because ours is better. That just made people hate the show, and they did that several times with things, and it was really frustrating. Now, Lethe is one of the ones I liked. It starts off with Sarek being attacked by a logic extremist, and then he's stuck, and Burnham has to use their connection through his Kartra, because part of the way they saved her life was to share his Kartra with her, and then that gave them a connection. And they basically go off in a shuttle and try and rescue him, and some of the few episodes are passable. I actually watched them. I felt like I was watching Star Trek again for a minute. Now, Magic to Make the Sanest Man Go Mad is another one, which is a fairly self-contained episode that works. Harry Mudd it's difficult to see him as a sociopath who then becomes this sort of jolly, sort of hapless sort of guy in the original series, where he has a malevolent side, but it's not on this level. Now you can say, well, maybe 5 years of being with Stella changed him. It's hard to tell, but the episode kind of works. It's kind of enjoyable. I don't like Jason Isaacs, so seeing him killed over and over again was nice. And this other one, oh god, Si Vis Pacem Parabellum. That's basically where they go down to the blue planet to set up. And a lot of people go on about, oh, Star Trek Discovery was so stupid they said they had sonar in space. It wasn't sonar in space. It was some sort of electromagnetic pulse, and they wanted to use it like sonar, but in space. That was the point. So they could use like a sonar-like thing where you could detect Klingon ships in space, but they weren't using sonar. They were just using that as an example. That's how sonar is used inside, an environment. And they're trying to create something similar to that through this naturally occurring thing on this planet. And then people going around saying, oh, Star Trek Discovery is stupid because it says they've got sonar in space. No, you're stupid because you don't listen to the episode and what they're actually doing. So yeah, I am a bit ashamed that I fell for that one because I kind of missed it on the original viewing, and then when people were saying they're using sonar in space because they don't know how science works, I just jumped on that. So yeah, I've had a few moments like that, I can admit that. Now, Into the Forest we go, which was the last episode before they jump into the mirror universe. That's right, they have to do the 100 plus jumps so they can map the Klingon cloaking technology, and so they can get past it. And then at the end, now maybe it was just done so they could work out how to jump to the mirror universe, but ultimately when Stamets says, I'm not doing any more of these jumps, you're going to have to find another way to do it. Lorca basically sabotages the whole thing and uses his last jump, where they're supposed to jump back to the Federation, to jump into the mirror universe so he can return himself home. That's what he was trying to do the whole time. So now episode 10, we get to what is it called? Despite Yourself. Okay. There's 4 episodes in the mirror universe, and it's all one sort of big story. Basically, we get to see all the other characters, how they are in this universe. That Lorca, was in bed with Burnham, who was trying to, get rid of Georgiou, and she, lets her back in just to sort of throw her back out by saying, I knew what you were doing the whole time, she's going to sacrifice her. Then just a lot of infighting, and the most annoying part is Georgiou would have been a great character as a Starfleet officer, and the fact that we get so much more time with the Mirror Universe one is disappointing, because I would have liked to have seen Michelle Yeoh just be a kick-ass Starfleet captain instead of having to be this mustache-twirling, over-the-top camp retro-style villain that they were going for with this. And also the really cute Helm officer who was in the first episode, or first 2 episodes, he would have been great just as a regular character, but instead we just get him as the temporary mirror captain who Burnham takes out in the first elevator ride, basically, in the show. And we have a lot of gross stuff like the cannibalism and how someone as evil as this. Now, admittedly, none of the people who sort of brought Georgiou into Starfleet after she was brought out of the Mirror Universe by Burnham when she beamed over really could comprehend what she was like. But the fact that Burnham and the others couldn't see past who they Georgiou, they saw her Georgiou in her and projected so much, and they really shouldn't have, as we see by who she ends up being when she comes back. And I really wish they'd focus on the idea, and I guess it's unsaid, that Empress Hoshi Sato must have set up this establishment that she's a part of and she's an ancestor of, and they've kept it in the family, and she had to prove that she was worthy and all that in Section 31. I would love them to have done some reference to her. It's sort of there, but they didn't actually refer to her. And yeah, basically they escape. Lorca is killed. They use destroying the it's not really a ship, it is really more like a city, the palace, to sort of use that energy to get back into the Federation, into the regular universe, which they do. Their universe, whichever one it is. Is it? Does Disco have its own universe, or is it the Kelviniverse? It's a bit of a mess. It's a bit of both, due to copyright and designs, but story, it's all a mess now. But now we get 2 episodes to wind everything up. The War Within, the War Without, or War Without, War Within. And it's basically just preparing the attack, dealing with Burnham knowing that I'm forgetting the name of the guy, the character, the guy who's God. They still don't really explain to me sufficiently how he's both a human and a Klingon, and how he was turned from a human to a Klingon, and exactly how that worked. They just show it as a torture, and that's one of the frustrating parts. When he's just a victim who was kidnapped and tortured for a long time, and then used sort of as some sort of sex puppet by this female Klingon commander, they really did a respectful look at post-traumatic stress, and it's something that people deal with, and the fact that they then undermined that by saying, actually, no, he's a Klingon spy, and that wasn't torture, that was them basically turning him into using surgery, a human, when I'm like, couldn't they have just used technology and cloning and things like that? And it's a bit of a mess. And that's one part that doesn't really work. And most of it is just working out what to do and having Georgiou basically exploiting her, using her basically malevolence and evilness to come up with an idea. And ultimately the idea is just to abandon Starfleet and their principles and just go for genocide and just try and destroy the Klingons to save themselves. And Burnham manages in one speech to change the Admiral's mind, and the whole crew is supporting her. So the Admiral, knowing she's just going to have a mutiny, says, "Okay, what do you suggest?" So they have this idea of using the planet's instability, and a lot of this I've already said in the shorter review. But basically, we know that Kronos basically imploded because it had because of how it was used with all the mining and all that. But obviously, it had to have some instabilities before that, and that's what they were trying to exploit with a bomb. And Georgiou goes off rogue with that, and Burnham just says, "Look, just go. We'll let you go. You know, if you fight us, maybe you'll win, but then you'll have Starfleet chasing you for the rest of your life. Just give us the bomb and go." And then they hand it over to L'Rell and basically say, "Use this to threaten the rest of the Klingon houses, basically, to end the war and to unify." And that's what she does. And that's the end. Then we have one more scene, basically, in Starfleet. And most interesting part about that was you can see, if you look carefully, the original uniforms that were designed for the series, along with the phasers and communicators before, because the best part about the show was the phasers and communicators, so far as design-wise, and maybe Discovery itself, the ship was nice. But, and it came from an original design that we'd always looked at and thought, wow, that would have been a weird Star Trek if they'd done that. God, I've lost my point now. The uniforms. They use them in the background on some of the extras. And if you look closely, you can sort of see what they would have looked like. They were sort of a modern sort of reuse of the sort of cage-style uniforms that looked enough like them, but I guess had a bit more tailoring, not being quite as loose as the originals, a bit more structure. But I wish they'd gone with those instead of the blue ones. And I get that it's supposed to be some sort of continuation of the Enterprise ones, but considering there's about 100 years between the two, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. They would have been gone better off with like a black pantsuit sort of thing, and then just the section be the colour, and then also the gold, so yellow with gold, blue with silver, red with bronze. It would have looked really interesting. They could have made it work, but instead they went with this generic sci-fi space suit, which we've seen in every other show, where it's basically a little bit Nazi-esque, and basically they're all blue. Like, look at Babylon 5, they're all sort of the same sort of thing. I don't know why they went with that generic thing when they should have stuck with what made Star Trek unique, which was the different colours for the different areas and that. So that was the most interesting part of the end. But yeah, the series as a whole had some nice design, had some nice production, had some nice effects, had some nice character moments, had some good actors, had a couple of good stories, but ultimately the problem was Kurtzman didn't understand Star Trek, didn't like Star Trek, didn't think Star Trek worked, didn't think Star Trek had a fan base, and felt the only way to revitalise the brand and keep it alive was to make it into other things for other people and try and make it so the general audience, the generic sci-fi fans, could like it. The people who didn't like Star Trek could like it, which is sort of something that's crept into Star Trek over the decades, and something that's been a real problem, where people sort of look at Star Trek as there's something wrong with it. We need to make it more for the general audience, make it less Star Trek, because it only appeals to, you know, the Star Trek fans. And it's like, well, there's enough of us, assuming we're spending all our money on Star Trek stuff, so one serious Star Trek fan can spend as much as probably 100 general audience members. So, okay, maybe there's only a few million of us, but really that's 10 times more, 100 times more, whatever. So they really underestimated that, and they really should have just made a Star Trek show for Star Trek fans and tried to have some crossover appeal, knowing that you're not going to get that anyway. Because although they did sort of foster a new sort of Star Trek audience, fan, or new Trek audience, Discovery audience, it was much smaller than the original Star Trek fan base. They didn't get more people. And those people weren't as supportive of the show, because there wasn't that sort of fun universe to sort of explore and want to maintain and keep alive with merchandising and in-universe books and things like that. So they did. It was a mistake. Doing the show the way they did, approaching Star Trek the way they did. But the individual episodes are not as bad as we sort of make out. A lot of people were just making it out. A lot of these people were just bigots, and they just didn't want a female black captain or female black person to lead the series, to lead a Star Trek series. They just didn't want to like the show. Even if the show had been done in canon and had all the superficial aspects right, they still would have hated the progressiveness of it. Even though it was always in the original Star Trek, they still would have had an issue with that. So, yeah. But that's my episode by episode review of season 1, just a bit of a look at the series. And it's not as bad as I remember. It's more watchable than I remember. I may watch some episodes again. I am going to buy, because I was given these episodes like on 1 or 2 or really, really high definition, really big files. But the other seasons are just DVD. So I'm going to buy the Blu-ray box set of the whole series just because I want to be able to view them really good quality, because I'm about to go into season 2, which is just DVD quality, so it's going to be a big drop, and the production is part of what I like about it. And I can't believe I couldn't keep this to 20 minutes, the 15 episodes. But yeah, I'm going to go. Feel free to share, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think of the series if you've watched it recently or thought of the series back then. And I would suggest revisiting it, knowing that it is an alternate timeline and that it really is an alternative universe based on the copyright issues, and just what the intentions were with the show, that they were trying to create more of a YA sci-fi drama rather than like an actual Star Trek like sci-fi anthology show. And when you look at what they're trying to do, it's more understandable, because it's not like, oh, they tried to do this and were just incompetent and wrong. No, they were trying to do this and they did it okay, but it really wasn't what they should have gone for in the first place. So it's easier to watch when you get the actual context and intentions and everything, but still has its main flaws and isn't really Star Trek. But yeah, I'm going to go.